In today's video, I'm sharing with you guys 7 very insightful tips to help you figure out whether you're losing your hair or whether it's just natural shedding. I'm 100% sure that by the time this video is over, you're going to be a lot more confident about what may be going on so that you don't have to continue losing sleep or hair over this. Now, these tips are based on solid, confirmed trichological research, so each and every single one of these tips will include insights that I am yet to see on any other YouTube video on this topic. So don't miss your blessing, girl. Make sure you stay tuned to the end of this video. Alright guys, let's keep it pushing. So it's definitely worth me mentioning at the beginning of this video that there are many different types of hair loss and even more things that can trigger hair loss. Everything from medication to hormonal imbalances to, of course, genetics, stress, and even allergic reactions. However, it is also a well-known fact that we also do shed our hair naturally. So I'd be lying if I said it couldn't sometimes be tough to figure out whether the hair that you're losing is something that you should be concerned about or not. Simply put, you want to know whether the hair that you're losing is normal or abnormal. So these next few pointers, tips, and questions will for sure be able to help you figure out whether the hair loss you are experiencing falls into the normal or the abnormal category so that you know how to handle it going forward. So this first tip from me is the main one that you will see the majority of videos on this topic talking about, and that is knowing the difference between shed hairs and broken hairs. Shed hairs have a white bulb on the end, whereas broken hairs do not. But I want to quickly get into the science of why that is, because this will really help me set the scene for many of my subsequent points. And the best way I can explain this is through the hair cycle. Now, each and every single hair on your head goes through this hair cycle that starts with an anagen growth phase and lasts for about 3 to 5 years depending on your genetics. Now, during this phase, your hair is consistently growing because it is connected to your body's blood supply, so it's able to continue to produce these new cells that come out of your head as hair, as well as other cells like melanocytes, which are the cells that give your hair its pigmentation. Now, once this growth phase is over, you move into phase 2, which is otherwise known as the catagen phase. And during this phase, the hair follicle begins to detach itself from the blood supply, and so it stops growing and also no longer has access to the melanocytes. Now fast forward to phase 3, which is the telogen phase, and this phase lasts for about 3+ months. Now by this point, the hair is fully detached and is resting in preparation for the next hair. It is once this final phase is complete that the hair falls out naturally in preparation for a new cycle with the new hair that's growing in its place. Now you have to bear in mind that that shed hair that has just come out of your hair naturally has just gone 3 months without any blood supply, any nourishment, and any access to melanocytes. So this explains why the naturally shed hairs have bulbs that are completely white. Now on average, you lose about 100 of these shed hairs naturally every single day, give or take. And before you guys start getting worried, at any given point in time, only 15% of your entire head should be in this shedding phase, which means at any given point in time, 85% of your hair should be growing. Now these percentages will be a little different for women that are pregnant, but for the majority of us, it's about an 85 to 15% ratio. So say if you had 1,000 hairs on your head, 850 of those hairs at any given point in time should be growing, whilst 150 of those will be resting in preparation to shed. Now thankfully you have a lot more than that. So if you're losing 100 hairs a day and most of those hairs have a white bulb, then you shouldn't really have much to worry about. This second tip from me is a direct progression from the first tip, and that is of all of the hairs that you are losing on a daily basis, not all of these hairs are going to be shed hairs. Some of these hairs will inevitably be broken hairs. Now if you look closely, broken hairs will typically have ends that are frayed or split. And if those splits are too small for you to see, then another dead giveaway is the length of the hair. So if the majority of the hairs that you are losing on a daily basis are significantly shorter than your average hair length, then it's very likely that you might be experiencing excessive breakage. Now, I don't want you to be fooled into thinking that because it's breakage, that it is a result of poor hair practices. Because there are actual conditions that are characterized by hair loss in the form of excessive breakage, where the hair grows out of the scalp, but then breaks somewhere along the hair shaft, as opposed to at the root. So if you're experiencing excessive breakage that is resulting in visibly choppy and uneven hair length, then you may want to consider looking into that professionally, so that you can get the appropriate diagnosis and treatment for that condition. Now, this next point is very key. If you miss every other tip in this video, I need you to take this one. And that's because on this next point, I want to address something that every single video I've seen has completely missed up until now. And that is to note that just because hair has a white bulb on the end does not mean it's automatically normal shedding. In actual fact, it's really not that simple. And this is because there are types of excessive and clinical hair loss where the hairs are literally characterized with having a white bulb on the end. But where with natural hair loss you're losing about 100 hairs a day, with these kinds of excessive hair loss, you're naturally shedding a lot more than 100 hairs a day. And here's the reason why I mentioned the hair cycle in the first point that relates to this one. And that's because in this condition, your hairs actually still go through that normal hair cycle, but instead of your anagen phase lasting for as long as it should, for some reason, usually stress related or trauma related, your body can push a whole bunch of hairs from the anagen phase into the telogen phase prematurely, where it then waits for about 3 months, and then you just have a mass exodus of shed hairs. So it's really not enough to just check if the hairs that you are shedding have a white bulb on the end. You also want to be paying attention to the amount of those types of hairs that you are shedding. Now, just as a point of reference, this is how much 1 day's worth of hair loss looks like for me. Now, you guys know I typically only brush my hair once a week because 1, y'all ain't gonna catch me doing all that unnecessary manipulation, and 2, who has the time? But I really did want to give you guys a visual representation of how much daily natural shedding looks like. And after 8 days of not combing or detangling my hair, this is how much hair I lose. So side by side, it's really easy to see that if you times the amount of hair that I lost on a daily basis by 8, it will give you how much you can see me losing hair on day 8 after not having combed my hair or brushed or detangled my hair for over a week. Now, please note that this is just a loose guideline. I do have long, medium thickness, super coily hair. So this will obviously play a part in what my hair clumps look like. For some people, it's going to look slightly more, and for some people, it's going to look slightly less. The most important thing to note here is to have a mental picture of how much hair you are losing every week. Or if you're into that kind of thing, you can actually keep the hair. And if you're noticing that that clump of hair is getting bigger and bigger every single week, then you definitely want to get someone to take a look at that for you. Now, remember those percentages that I talked about in tip 1 about how much of your entire hair should be growing versus resting and shedding at any given point in time? Well, you'll be glad to know that there's a simple test for this so that you can figure out whether the rate of hair loss you are experiencing is normal or not. But unfortunately, we don't really have time to get into that in this video. So if you'd like to see a follow-up video to this one where I show you exactly how to carry out this test on yourself, then go ahead and type test in the comments and I'll get that video up for you guys. In the meantime, if you want to see more science-backed hair care tips from me every single week, then please do me a favor and hit that subscribe and notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying it so far. But don't go anywhere just yet. You want to stay tuned because I've got a few more gems coming up in just a second. Now, my next pointer is a question that you want to ask yourself if you believe that you have been experiencing unusual hair loss, and that is to ask yourself whether you've started taking any new medication or whether you've changed existing medication. So this doesn't just apply to pharmaceutical drugs for health conditions, it also applies to contraceptives. And this is simply because whilst these drugs are really effective at doing what they were designed to do, a lot of them do this with the possible side effect of hair loss. Now, the fact of the matter is that not all doctors are going to take this into consideration when prescribing you these drugs, because let's be honest, their priority is your vital health, not your hair. So in these situations, it's always very good to sit and talk with your doctor about all of the possible side effects that you may experience as a result of these drugs. If it does turn out that hair loss could be a possible side effect, then maybe you want to ask them what other options you have that will still treat the problem without the side effect of hair loss. Moving on to tip number 5 from me, and that is you want to ask yourself, what is the time period over which this hair loss is happening? If you're experiencing hair loss, did it happen suddenly and stop as suddenly as it started? Or is this hair loss happening a bit more insidiously with progressively more hair loss over a longer period of time that is resulting in your hair looking thinner and thinner as the days go by? Now, if the hair loss you're experiencing is the case of the former, where it's happened super suddenly and it hasn't continued or it hasn't progressed since that one time that it's happened, then before you jump to the conclusion that you're losing all your hair, I would definitely say consider how long it has been since the last time you properly detangled. It could very well be the case that you haven't properly detangled your hair in 6 weeks, and what you're now seeing as sudden hair loss is just 6 weeks of normal shed hairs. Think about it this way. 6 weeks is 42 days. If you're losing 100 hairs on each and every single one of those 42 days, that's 4,200 hairs after 6 weeks. So, yeah. Similarly, it could also very well be the case that you've just done a style that has caused a lot of tangling, that has required excessive force to detangle, and has as a result caused a lot of breakage. And so not only will you be losing naturally shed hairs in that detangling session, you will also have a lot of broken hairs to accompany those naturally shed hairs. That's going to make anyone's clump of hair look like a lot more than it normally should. Tip number 6 is that you want to check your entire scalp to see if the hair loss that you are experiencing is is concentrated to one or a few particular areas as opposed to distributed evenly across your scalp. This is because when you lose hairs naturally, that natural hair loss is evenly distributed across your scalp, such that you cannot tell that one part is looking a bit thinner or more sparse than another part of your head. So you can actually do this by yourself by using the balls of your fingertips to feel throughout your scalp. Alternatively, you can get someone that you trust and feel comfortable with to check this for you. And if it does turn out to be the case that you are experiencing hair loss in condensed areas as opposed to across your scalp, then you definitely want to get in touch with a professional about this. So my 7th and final tip to help you decide whether your hair loss is normal or abnormal is to ask yourself if this hair loss is accompanied by any scalp dis-ease. And by dis-ease, I mean any kind of inflammation, bumps, burning, itching, redness, flakes, and bleeding. The reason I say this is because these symptoms tend to typically accompany certain types of hair loss, or in some cases, the hair loss that you are experiencing could be a byproduct of these scalp diseases. So if you're noticing that your hair loss is being accompanied by any of these scalp conditions, then you know for sure that that's not normal and is definitely something that you should get a professional to look into accordingly. The last thing I do want to note, and this is not a tip, but it does supersede every single tip that I've mentioned in this video, and that is the fact that you know your hair better than anyone else on this planet. You see it more than anyone else does, and so no one else is better placed than you to know if there's something going on with your hair that's out of the ordinary. I definitely believe that intuition plays a huge role here, so if you have a gut feeling that something is not quite right, then the last thing you want to do is talk yourself out of seeing a professional for fear of being labeled as paranoid or a hypochondriac. In these cases, I think we can all agree that it's better to err on the side of caution. So if you do find that you can identify with any of the things that I've mentioned in this video, then please do feel free to get in touch with me about it using the consultation link in the description box below. And if you don't live in London and would prefer an in-person consultation, then I've also placed a link to a directory for trichologists around the world so you can find one that's closest to you. Now, for more scientific tips on hair loss and hair growth, you can go ahead and click this playlist on the screen right now. And that's everything from me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has helped you clear some things up, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.